when I think of dialed in, it's like I have a bigger purpose. That bigger purpose drives my goals. Those goals make it really easy for me to get passionate about becoming excellent at the things I need to achieve those goals. And then it makes it easy to do the bad stuff, the practice, right? And the practice with intention around your colleagues, around your peers to make you better.
Over the course of my life and career, I've discovered the power of consciously investing in mindset and personal development. It has been a true game changer for me in my personal and professional life, and I'm extremely excited that you decided to join us today to take one step forward in your own life. Most of my breakthroughs have come from one-on-one conversations. We created this show to bring you those unfiltered conversations each and every week. Good morning. Greg Tomczyk here, host of the Connected Mindset Live. Really looking forward to diving in here today. But before we do, today's episode is presented by Go Delete Me. One of the questions we get asked frequently as a cybersecurity company is, how do I delete my information online? Today, you can go get 20% off Go Delete Me at gregtomczyk.live and delete some of that information that you're probably getting calls and mail to your house that you don't want. And it's an easy way to do it. So we're a huge proponent of their company and what they're doing. So without further ado, we got Mr. Jared Butler on the line with us today on the show. Looking forward to diving into a number of parallels, JR. But before we do, tell everybody a little bit about the mission you're on, what you guys are doing over at Shift Group, and what you're hoping that each person listening in today walks away with.
Awesome. Greg, thanks for having me, buddy. The mission of Shift Group is to help former college professional Olympic athletes and those that serve in the military find purpose and passion in the next part of their life's journey. We do that by showing them the value of a career in sales, training them on taking their soft skills and experience that make them really, really good candidates for sales careers, and adding in the skills and knowledge that hiring companies look for when they hire salespeople, and then connecting them with companies that are looking to hire athletes and veterans. So the way I think about our mission is helping improve the transition process for athletes and veterans, but also improve the hiring process for companies that hire entry-level sales. Is the highest attrition of any profession in the entire world by about 3x. So it's a massive problem on both sides of our marketplace, and that's what we're looking to improve.
Heck yeah, I love it. I think taking that dual-headed approach is so critical because you see a lot of people that they just want to help the person get a job, but if the recruiting company or the organization that is bringing these people in don't get it, you're banging against the wall continuously. And I'm sure you saw that throughout your career. Let's dive a little bit into where it all started. So, you were an athlete. Tell everybody a little bit about, your journey from, kind of like high school on and how you got to the point of saying, holy cow, there's a huge problem here. We need to solve it. And we're going to do it through Shift Group.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I talk about, our mission is serving myself at 2 points in my life. I could skate, Greg, before I could walk. Like, and I'm not kidding. Like literally I was on skates before I could walk. My dad's a Hall of Fame high school hockey coach. So I grew up in a high school hockey locker room, which makes a lot of sense for people that know me. And I was fortunate because of hockey. I got to go to a really good secondary school. And then I played in college at Holy Cross, was part of a team that beat the University of Minnesota about 20 years ago. It's still considered the biggest upset in college hockey history. Then one day I woke up and nobody wanted to pay me to play hockey, which is what kind of my plan was. And my dad was like, you need to get a job. That was literally, dude, I'm not kidding, the first time I thought about, like, what am I going to do the rest of my life? It sucked. It was brutal. I tripped and fell into sales. It checked so many boxes for me. I had a long sales career, 16 years. A lot of it in leadership, so hiring salespeople. And I think I'm pretty good at that, but I was wrong about 40 or 50% of the time, even with a pretty good GPS when it comes to that. So Shift Group is again, like, I wish Shift Group existed when I was 24, 25 years old and I entered the job market, somewhere where I could learn about the value of my athletic experience and what it meant moving forward, somewhere where I could learn what careers are out there that match kind of my financial goals and my vision for my life. And then when I was hiring salespeople, I wish Shift Group existed as a place to go and find the right profile for the type of person that I wanted to hire. So that's, like, my story and Shift Group's story are one and the same. It's, I think, why we're successful is because I understand, like, deeply both sides of our marketplace. I know what it's like to transition, and I know what it's like to hire, and they both suck and they're both hard, and we're going to make them better.
I love it, man. I know it was brutal going through that process of, like, where do I go? Who do I go to? What do I ask them? And you guys are solving all that. I've seen your platform and some of the awesome things you guys are doing. What about the missteps along the way? Like, what about the messiness that got you, through the transition is terrible. It's brutal. It's like you have no idea which way you're going. You try all these different directions. You trip and fall, you fall into holes, and then you get back out and you're like, I'm going to make sure nobody falls in that hole I just, went down. So dive in a little bit to that, what you went through, what you learned. I think that'd be beneficial for everyone listening in.
I think, like, and we see it, we do it with military veterans too, right? And, pretty perfect for Veterans Day that we're talking about this. And I think when you think about a life of service and a life of sport, the things that they have in common are, like, purpose bigger than yourself. So you're surrounded by people that you're literally going to battle with, right? In the sense of service, you're literally going to combat, and in the sense of sport, you're competing with these people, and it drives you in the morning. It's the last thing you think about before you go to bed. It's hard as hell being an athlete. It's hard as hell being a soldier, but you get through those hard times because you're doing it for something bigger, and you have a why and a reason. And I think the reason that transitions are hard, and it doesn't have to just be out of sports and service, but any transition, is because you lose that guiding purpose. So for me, like, those dark times in the transition, like, not having a reason to do hard stuff. You don't do hard stuff. You don't surround yourself with people that do hard stuff because you don't have a reason to do hard stuff. Mm-hmm. And we're at our best when we do hard stuff, right? So I think, like, I struggled with drugs and alcohol. I've been sober for over 11 years now. But like, I always had a penchant for it. But I think when I lost hockey, I didn't have a governor anymore to be like, I got practice tomorrow, mm-hmm. right? So things got really bad. Things got really dark. And I think any athlete and any soldier will tell you the thing you miss the most is the camaraderie and the locker room and being around your friends all day that you go to battle with. So, like, for me, I didn't know that's what I needed, but that's what I found, right? And I think and it's not sales for everybody, but there are a lot of different professions where you can go find that. And I don't care what you do. If you're a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, a salesperson, you're going to do hard shit, like, full stop. There's no easy rainbows and butterfly jobs out there. There just isn't. There's always stuff that you don't want to do. And in order to do that and do it well and do it with conviction and passion, you have to be doing it for a bigger reason. So I think that's what, like, the ideal transition looks like, is, like, really first and foremost digging into that bigger reason, that bigger purpose. And that's finally what kind of got me over the hump after a couple of years was having that bigger purpose, that bigger reason. It was always there, buried, even with the purpose of being a Division I hockey player. Like, why did I want to be a Division I hockey player? Why did I want to be a professional hockey player? I wanted to have like a bright future and financial freedom. Like, at the end of the day, that's really what it was about. Like, obviously I love the game, but like at the core, that's really what was there. So I had to uncover that again. And then I had to go find something that would allow me to do that in a way that professional sports did. And that's how I landed in sales. And that's been the life-changing moment for me ever since then.
I love it. Yeah, I think one of the things that resonated with me through some of the stuff you were posting, and you put out some stuff that's pretty raw, and I think not enough people are as vulnerable as they need to be to teach people what it's actually like. Like, it looks, if somebody looks at my journey from the outside, you get out of baseball, start a company, and then all of a sudden you have a company with a couple people and you're like, in their eyes, a success. But all the messiness in there is what they need to know, because if they don't recognize that and get shared those details, they go through the same thing. I see it with, veterans. I'm in Norfolk, Virginia, so biggest Navy base. You get people retiring basically every day. You get people getting out of sports. And oftentimes they hit the bottle, right? And it's like, hey, nobody knows what they're going through. Nobody can relate, so they feel isolated, and then they are just trying to numb it to increase that dopamine level. And I had to go through that when I was getting out of baseball, and I've started to share it with people around me. And it's like, if just that one person knows that somebody went through it, they can better navigate it. For me, it was like I had to basically like think about every 10 minutes, like, or every 24 hours was like, hey, I need to set myself up to not feel like, crap after I did what made me feel good for 2 hours. And I try to share that with people, because if people don't know that other people are going through it, it's like, it's hard to get through, because it's the up, and then it's the down, and then it's like you're doing something hard and then you reward yourself. And how did you kind of navigate that? Was it just like a cold turkey type thing? Was it a rock bottom type thing? For me, it was kind of like a rock bottom, but everybody's journey is a little bit different.
Yeah, I think like it was a lot of rock bottoms, I would say. I found, even when I was still like using, I was still kind of falling into some success.
Yeah.
And that was almost a bad thing for me, because I could fake it, right? Like, what the last night I ever drank, my youngest brother threw himself a party because he transferred to a different college. It's a famous party because it got me off the bottle. Yeah. But I was kind of coming out of like my first blackout of several that day and that night, and I was struggling at the time because I knew I had a problem, and I was trying to stop. Like, this was me like going into a different gear, and still my dad, my brother, and one of my best friends were like having a heart to heart with me, like, because I wasn't getting in trouble, I was still having success in work, and they were like, dude, we're worried about you, like, they were like, you're a weekend warrior. And I was like, Thursday night hit, and then it was like game on until basically Monday morning, and I was getting away with it, but I was definitely like in a bad place. And they were like, you need to slow down. And I my biggest strength is my self-awareness. I told them, I'm like, dude, this is me slowing down. Like, I don't think I can slow down. I think I have to stop. Like, I think that's my personality, is like my mother would say, JR, you don't have a dimmer. Like, it's on or off, right? Like, that's it. So I had to turn it off. So that night and I told them that, I'm like, I'm going to drink tonight. This is it. And they kind of laughed at me because I was buzzing. And of course, I drank that whole night. I drank till 7:30 in the morning with a bunch of buddies I grew up with. My mom came down to our kitchen because my brother threw the party at my parents' house. I was drinking a Bud Light. My mom's like, I think that's enough, JR. And I took my last sip of alcohol, and I was like, yeah, you're right. And she meant for the night, but I meant for life. And I haven't had a drink since that morning. That was back in 2012.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's
a much. When I tell the story in a different setting, it's much longer and funnier, but it was a good moment for everybody in my life.
Yeah, I think it's a societal norm, right? It's like let's go have a business meeting at 4 o'clock and grab a cocktail. How do you navigate that? Is just I know because it's not easy. It's everybody has social interactions, and alcohol is a big piece of it, or something else, because that's what relaxes people. So it's kind of like how do you navigate that? It's just that ability to say I'm gonna have something else.
The that is literally like I people know I'm pretty as you said, I'm pretty open about my sobriety because it's a huge part of who I am. It's like the proudest thing I am of myself that isn't on my resume, right? Is my sobriety, and anybody who's done it knows how hard it is. The hardest part about it is exactly what you just said, because if you take a step, I was 27 years old. I was in channel sales, which is like a big time relationship business, a lot of entertaining, right? And I'm 27. I'm living in the city for the first time, right? A lot of Sunday fun days. And then you think about your work events, you think about family events like Christmas and holidays. And in your mind, you're like, alcohol is involved in all of these things. How am I going to do this? How am I going to like not drink when like a huge part of my life is built around drinking? And that I always tell people when I talk to them that come to me and say, I want to stop, and they bring that up. I'm like, dude, who do you think you are? Like, do you think people give a shit about what's in your cup? Like, get over yourself, right? And the reason I say that is because that's what somebody said to me. And it was like this epiphany moment of like, he's right. He's right. Like, this is a complete ego problem. Like, nobody actually cares whether I'm drinking a ginger ale or a Jameson and ginger, right? Like, so that for me, like that epiphany moment of like, nobody cares except for me, and everything I'm building up in my head about like how this is a huge part of everything is 100% in my own head. And that got me over the hump initially. And then, and I don't recommend this for everybody. Everybody's different. I'm obviously very open about my situation. I own it. Like and I owned it right from the jump. Like first time I went out with customers, again, after I stopped drinking, I would order a soda water and they'd be like, what the hell, JR? And I'd be like, well, I don't know if you know this, but I'm allergic to alcohol. And they'd be like, really? And I'd be like, yeah, I break out in handcuffs. You want to see it? Right. Or, one of my favorite lines, my uncle used it because I come from a family with a lot of sobriety. Is like, hey, listen, everybody gets a big cup of alcohol when they're born. I finished mine by the time I was 27. I don't have any more. I don't have any more left.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you got to kind of own it, in my opinion. And again, I don't think that's for everyone. Some people just, if people are shy, I tell them you're on medication and you can't drink for a little while. Like just, you got to get through it literally a day at a time, especially initially. And that's how I did it.
Yeah, I did a lot of research through my journey to try to get off that boat. And one of those things was like, I already feel good. Like I already feel good in this. I'm enjoying your company and your presence, and like it's like everybody is stressed out, and they're like, hey, now I need to get to it where I'm feeling good. And it's like it's that constant chase. And I think a lot of people need to hear that, because whether it's food, whether it's alcohol, whatever it is, the substance of the day or the week or the month. People are numbing themselves because they don't want to confront something. So until you confront that, you're kind of just spinning wheels. And I think that's what happens in transition a lot, is like, because it's so hard, you're like, I really want that new job, or I really want to get to that goal. But you start spinning wheels because you get caught up in these kind of like, rotating, things that are just sending you into holes. And then you get deeper and deeper, and you look back and you're like, holy cow, what am I doing here? That's kind of the rock bottom.
Yeah. And I think like one, like thought or like mindset to have in that transition is to like remember where you came from. And what I mean by that is like, the first time I got on skates, like I was horrible. Like I sucked. Right. And then, 19 years later, you're a Division I hockey player playing, in front of thousands of people. You got to realize that the journey to get there was not easy ever. And anything worth any like endpoint worth getting to is not going to be easy. So when you're in that transition and you're doing stuff that makes you uncomfortable and you're bad, remember, if you're a veteran, remember your first training camp, right? Your first boot camp. Remember the first time you did those exercises and you did 6 push-ups instead of 100, right? Like, you just got to go back to that beginner's mindset in your transition. And that again, it goes back to ego a little bit, Greg,
Yeah.
right? Like, you got to drop the ego. Ego is truly the enemy.
How do you look at ego in sales? Because a big part of sales is convincing people, enrolling people in your vision. And a lot of times, if you put your ego aside, people think maybe you're not passionate enough about it, or like something of that nature. We're just like, hey, I have a great product. I'd love for you to buy it. And, here's the price and we try to like oversell people, and that's a little bit of ego, right?
Totally. And there is a difference between ego and confidence, right? Ego is like internal, and a lot of it is BS, right? Confidence should come from preparation and research.
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely, you have to be confident in the product that you're selling and why that customer should buy it. And it shouldn't be actually, and this, Greg, it's not about your product. It's about them.
Yeah.
Like, why should they buy it? What's going on in their business? What's going on in their process that you can fix? And based on your research and your preparation, this is why I'm pushing you, right? And that's, I think, the biggest difference for sure.
Yeah, I love that. How do you help? So like, how do you look at when you're selling athletes and veterans to companies, and we'll get to the athlete veteran side and how to kind of set them up for success. But when you're, pitching somebody who's getting out of, the military or getting out of sports that has, little documented experience, but they have these skills, how do you relay that to, a corporate person that's just looking at a laundry list of qualifications of these people need 5 years of experience, they need a degree in this? How do you kind of convey and bridge the gap there for companies to help them hire who they need?
Yeah, it's a great question. And typically, candidly, if somebody needs 5 years of experience, those aren't necessarily the jobs we're going after. But even in the entry level world, especially in this job market, you are seeing companies say, well, we'd prefer somebody with 6 months experience, 6 to 12 months experience. And our 90% of our candidates don't have that. I like to, it's like when I sold software, I like to use their words, not against them, but to show them like what, and if you look at a job posting, and I don't care if it's in technology, medical device, pharmaceutical, doesn't matter. If you look at a job posting in entry-level sales, the words you're going to see on that page are going to be looking for someone that's competitive, someone that's coachable, someone that understands how to be a good teammate, how to have a growth mindset, like all these little like characteristic nuggets, right? And I'll ask a company, like, how do you interview for competitiveness? That seems really hard. And they'll say, well, we ask them questions to give us examples of competitiveness. And that's our in right there. It's like, okay, I've got 500 folks that I can put in front of you tomorrow that can give you 100 stories about their competitiveness, about their coachability, about their teamwork, right? And then, we're also like, the reality is to be successful in anything, in my opinion, you need the right characteristics and you need the right mindsets. You do need skills and you do need knowledge. And that's where Shift Group's unique offering is very different for companies, because in order for an athlete or a veteran to get to that point where they're meeting with somebody, we've spent a lot of time with them, giving them those skills and giving them that knowledge. So we're basically, what we're telling companies is like, listen, this is what your job posting says you're looking for. Here's the reason why our candidates have those things. And they know how to use salesforce.com. We taught them how to do it. And no, they don't have 6-9 months of experience, but they're the type of human beings that are going to close that gap way faster than somebody that doesn't. It's like the equivalent of like, you got a receiver that you're trying to bring into the NFL. Are you going to hire somebody who runs track and can do a 4.5 but has never run a post? Or are you going to hire the guy in the stands because he's been to every Patriots game and he knows your playbook? pretty simple answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta look at attitude over aptitude, I think, especially for the function that we focus on, which is entry level sales.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of folks just think years of experience is quality experience that's going to transfer to their company. We see that a lot in cybersecurity. I have a apprenticeship program and a course that we offer and help people get into cybersecurity jobs. And a big part of that is they want people with experience already. But it's how do you get out of college and already have experience? It's not possible. So we try to train them with the transferable skills to say they've already learned X, Y, Z. Just like they already know Salesforce. They know how to go through a sales process, and they know how to deliver on objections. And it's like, that's what you're looking for. Why not take a chance on somebody? And they're probably going to prove you wrong on your piece of paper. So I think that's extremely powerful.
Absolutely. My favorite is when a company's been around for like 2 years and they want 5 years of a track record. It's like, wait, you don't even have 5 years of a track record.
Yeah, somebody's got to hold them accountable, though, right? It's like there needs to be accountability in the different transactions taking place, and a lot of times, it's a misconception from both sides. Like the candidate's like, I can't get a job, and then the company's like, I can't hire anybody, and they're just like bickering back and forth. It's kind of funny, but I think that's just where technology is right now. With you get a portal of LinkedIn applications of 2,000. How do you choose from these people? And the HR is over swamped with paperwork, and there's a lot of obstacles there that I think you guys are helping to address. What about the athletes and veteran side? Like, what are you seeing work for folks like that? Obviously, you went through a transition to get that first job, that second job, that leadership role, and then started Shift Group. What are you seeing as some of the things they're battling and things that people listening in today can kind of think about as they get that next role or get that next promotion or that first role?
The secret ingredient for us when we know that a kid is going to be successful, and this goes for athletes and for veterans. I use this term a lot. I call it being dialed in, and like being dialed in means I don't need to explain it to you, Greg. Right? You played sports, right? And I don't need to explain what I mean by that to our candidates. But what we have to do successfully in our program is we have to get them dialed in again into this career. And it's not like it's not like a win or a loss, right? Because the way I think about it is we are very transparent about the opportunity that sales affords you. You as a person have to decide if it aligns with your bigger purpose, right? And I talked about like my core purpose when I got away from hockey and figured out, growing up in a blue collar house, going away to boarding school as like a essentially a scholarship kid, and I went to the 8th most expensive secondary school in the world, literally, right? So I'm surrounded by people that were doing things that I just couldn't do. Like I had to say no to a lot of stuff. And at the core of what I've done and who I am, I don't want to say no to stuff that I want to do. And because of that, it's for me, I'm driven by financial freedom. So, and a lot of people are, and that's what we try to help them figure out, right? Is that it's intrinsic and it's extrinsic motivation. And if we can help them uncover that, then the rest of being dialed in comes with it. Because when I think of dialed in, it's like I have a bigger purpose. That bigger purpose drives my goals. Those goals make it really easy for me to get passionate about becoming excellent at the things I need to achieve those goals. And then it makes it easy to do the bad stuff, the practice, right? And the practice with intention around your colleagues, around your peers, to make you better. And it's all kind of, I bundle it into being dialed in, and I keep it simple because I'm not that smart with it's about purpose, passion, and practice. And if we can get someone bought into that, and we do it a good percentage of the time, and when we miss, sometimes it's on us, and sometimes it's just like, hey, they're not really driven by this, and that's okay. And I always tell people, like, hey, sales is the worst career in the world to make a mediocre salary because it sucks. It's hard as hell. People tell you no way more than they tell you yes. And there's a lot of administrative stuff that isn't going to be fun for you. So if you're not driven financially, then very likely you should probably look at a different career.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we win. Where we win is when we capture those hearts and minds that do have that bigger purpose. And then they're dialed in. Then all the other stuff we make them do is easy because it's just hard work, and they're going to do it because they're driven and they're dialed in.
Mm-hmm. I love that, dialed in, because I think a lot of people talk about it in sports, but when you get out of sports, it's kind of like, if you're not meeting your goals, you're not dialed in. But how do you get dialed in, to get to that goal? And I think that's one of those things that a lot of people don't get to. I also think one of the things for athletes and veterans is the metrics aspect. Like in sports, we're very data driven, and sales is very data driven. Business is in general. Like, you have to have clear metrics, and if you don't, you're just kind of, you're going off of luck. I did that early on in my career. Nobody had metrics in cybersecurity. Just like, go sell to lawyers and see if they'll buy. And if you end up exceeding somebody's expectations, and then they move the yard line, so they don't even know the metrics, and then you guys, you're not on the same page, and you're trying to go back and forth. How do you help folks kind of take that athlete metrics, like, hey, miles an hour or shot speed, things of that nature, into the business world? Do you guys teach that aspect as well?
Yeah, we talk about this idea of, like, we're fortunate in sales that there is a scoreboard, right? Like, there's a scoreboard, there's a depth chart. You're consistently being assessed by the people around you, the people you work for, and the people you work with. And we start it right in our program. Like, we rate every candidate. We give them consistent constructive criticism and feedback and coaching. And if that's uncomfortable to you, then you need to go look for another career, because that's how it's going to be. So that's kind of how we hammer it into their head. And then obviously we educate them. That's where the skills and knowledge come in, with what that scoreboard is. And that scoreboard's about activity and productivity and outcomes, right? It's like, and some of those things you can control, and some of those things you can't. I think on activity is 100% in your control. Always. You can control how many emails you send, how many calls you make, how many LinkedIn messages you send. That needs to be just like in sports. You need to get to the gym. Mm-hmm. You need to get into the driveway and shoot pucks. All that. You need to do your sprints. That's your activity metric. Check that box every single time. The productivity comes from mastery, right? Because now you can control how many emails you send, but how good those emails are, that's your second metric, right? How many of those calls are turning into meetings, right? Mm-hmm. And that's like where, I can shoot pucks in the driveway blindly, but if I shoot for the upper left-hand corner, how often am I hitting that upper left-hand corner, right? Going over the goalie's shoulder. And then the last piece is somewhat out of your control in terms of outcomes, right? We all know deals push, budget gets cut, but all the other stuff, getting to the right people, aligning to the right business problems, making sure that the criteria that the customer is evaluating on matches your unique product set, those types of things. Those are the things you have to control. So when a deal does push that you forecasted and you got to go to your boss, you got to be able to explain, like, hey, I did all this stuff and this deal pushed because of X. The CIO got fired and he was our champion and our buyer, and now we have to start over. That's fine. You can't control that the CIO got fired, right? So we try to put everything in the same context as sports and military service, because the same measurement exists in both worlds.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love how you mentioned you're selling why they need the product or service as opposed to selling benefits, because I think a lot of times, especially in tech, because it's a big translation, you have to translate how this is, something that they may not understand, especially in cybersecurity. They're like, we don't need to secure what we can't see. So it's, you have to tell them in their language. And I think that's something that I don't see much in the sales world, especially on the tech side. It's, it's an email that says, here's what we do, here are the benefits. It's like, you want to hop on a call, and it's like, well, you didn't say anything about my business, why it's relevant to me. And, you're shooting dark. And I did that early on in business. I was just shooting from the hip. And then, like you said, when you start shooting in the upper right and you're like, hey, I could adjust a little bit this way, then you start to get that outcome that you want. But I think a lot of people quit before they get there, because it's that hard, grueling, brutal process.
Yeah. And I think, like, to your point, right, it all starts with empathy. Like, nobody cares about you until they know that you care, right? Like, so it's like you gotta earn the right to talk about features and benefits, and you have to put them in the context of their world. Like, like the example I always use, I was running a team. We were selling an infrastructure software, so like data center management, to a convention center locally.
Mm-hmm.
These people get like 180,000 people into their convention center every single weekend, pretty much, and during the week. And we were selling on the value proposition of like saving them money in their data center. But when we met with the CIO, his biggest thing that he was thinking about was Wi-Fi, because this is like, the mid 2010s, iPads are coming out. People are now showing up to these conventions with an iPhone, an iPad, and a computer, and they're connecting all three to the internet. And this guy's all he's thinking about is, how do I improve the experience of all these visitors that we get? So the way we positioned the technology was like, hey, you've got X amount of thousands of dollars budgeted next year for your data center. With our technology, you can actually unlock about 40% of that and use it to do a Wi-Fi revamp. And they literally sent us the purchase order the next day, Greg, right? And we had never talked about Wi-Fi once the entire sales motion, because we had never talked to this person who was ultimately making the decision and spending the money. But the second we put it into context of his world and what he wakes up thinking about and worrying about, now you got a deal, right? So again, you got to go back and you got to really understand their business, their challenges, their processes, and where there's gaps on like where they are today and where they want to get to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's also something that athletes and veterans resonate with as well, is you're like trying to pick apart a competitor or an enemy, on the battlefield, or, if you're playing sports, it's the person, across the field. That's something I always communicate to companies when it comes to security, because they understand how to exploit and find those gaps first and foremost. And a lot of that happens in sales as well, where you're not exploiting, you're not trying to do it maliciously, but you're finding things that are really important to these people so that you can tailor the message to them. And I think that's the value of like niching down and really understanding why you're serving that person and what they actually need, in return. And that's something I had to learn the hard way, was I can't serve everybody. Obviously, everybody needs cybersecurity, but it's not going to be possible to serve the whole world from that standpoint. Yeah. So do you work through that with people on, hey, you have this experience in your past, like maybe you were a X type of athlete or X type of military veteran, and this is going to be the most relevant market for you to get into? Or is it kind of more skill building, and then the company will help them niche down on who they're going after?
Yeah, I think it's in certain scenarios, it's very obvious, right? Like we do have a lot of like there's a lot, software is eating the world. So there's a lot of like tech companies in these verticals where it's like painfully obvious. Like we got a college athlete that was an athletic director for 10 years. And we have a platform, a fundraising platform we work with that sells to athletic directors. Like, yeah, you gotta go here. Right. And then obviously on the veteran side there, there's a huge cottage industry in defense tech, mm-hmm. where not only their experience matters, but also their like literally their clearance. Like they have to be able to walk in to certain buildings in the United States that only they can walk into. But for the most part, it's like pretty broad brushes. We're getting out of tech, not like out of tech, but like we're adding onto tech, like things like medical device, pharmaceutical, advertising, mm-hmm. Staffing and recruiting. That's where I think, we're going to have to do a better job of like helping people niche down into the sales industry that makes sense aligned to their background, right? You get a college football coach, they've been recruiting for a decade, right? Like they're going to be a really good fit in staffing and recruiting. You got a combat medic, obviously you're going to push them to med device or pharma. So like I think we'll get better at that, and we're thinking about like some behavioral assessments to help us think about that. My opinion is there should always be a self-selection portion of it. Like I know there's guys I know that I think would do great in tech, but they've been very successful in med device. So you don't want to pigeonhole a person either, right? So you want to educate them as much as you can, give them as much data about themselves that tells them like where they might be a fit, but ultimately you want that person to have freedom of choice, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure you've done some kind of psychological experiments, just seeing all these people come through, being self-aware yourself. Do you think, obviously we have strengths by nature, but do you think there's that nurture aspect where you can actually reinvent yourself to become something that you want to be, no matter what your background is?
I do. I'm a strong believer in like neuroplasticity, right? And like I'll give you a real example that applies to you and I, Greg. We're actually very low on initiative. Like I don't even need to have you take this assessment to know, because as athletes we're coached and we're told what to do and how to be prepared and when to be there our entire lives. And then you get into a career like sales and you have a ton of autonomy. So, but that being said, there's other strengths that fill that gap, which is like you are used to structure. So what comes down, what we teach our athletes and our veterans have low initiative too, is you backfill your low initiative with an operating rhythm, and you know how to be accountable to an operating rhythm and a cadence. But now it's on you to build it, and once you build it, you now the initiative, the necessity of initiative goes away, because you don't have to wake up and think about what am I going to do today to be successful, because you've built an operating rhythm, and now you do still have to push yourself, but you have a plan. And that's what you're used to. You're used to being given a playbook and following the playbook. So those are the kind of things that you can kind of tweak. And then I do think like extrovertness and things like empathy, I think you can work on those like intangible characteristics. It's not easy by any means, but it's definitely doable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like tearing apart, part of your body, rebuilding it up. It's that you're pushing through the normal, the average, steps you're taking or motion that you're doing. It's like, it's like throwing a baseball to me, or throwing a football, or trying to do like swinging left-handed. Like it feels super weird, but if you do it over and over, I think that's key. And the cadence is huge. I think I see that a lot with veterans. We have a lot of veterans in our apprenticeship program, skill bridge type folks who are getting out of the military. And I see it quite frequently with athletes. Everybody's a little bit different, but they like to have that structure, to be told what to do. And sometimes we'll put them in a position, obviously we have our metrics, but like letting them not get some guidance to see which way they want to take their career, as opposed to us saying, hey, here's our normal path. That's the path you're going to go down. And it makes people squirm a little bit, but it's good for them to be kind of a little bit unsure of what they need to do, so that they can kind of exercise that I need to figure it out to get to that end goal I already know about. But getting there is the unclear part and the hard part that benefits them.
Yeah, there's a term in the military. It's called commander's intent, and basically the idea is like, most people think of veterans as like they have to be told exactly like what to do, but actually what they really need is they need to know what the outcome needs to be, and they need left and right guardrails. But like for the most part, if you're very clear and concise on what the outcome needs to be, then they can get there. And that's kind of what we try to do too, is like commander's intent. Like the goal is this is some ways that you can get there, but ultimately we're going to let you drive this and drive this outcome that you need to get to.
I love that. Yeah. I've seen companies pay people 6 figures just to help them implement commander's intent, because they feel like people are not achieving what they want them to achieve, because they're trying to tell them how they would do it. and the person's like, I want to do it a different way, and then the outcome gets compromised. So I, growing up in a military family, I saw that a lot, where it was, hey Greg, I want you to be at practice by 6 p.m. and it's like, well, I don't know how I'm going to get there. They didn't say I'm going to pick you up at 5 p.m. We're going to go to practice at 6. It's kind of like you got to figure it out on how you're going to get there. And I think that muscle is so important to be successful at anything, or be able to achieve any goal, is being able to somewhat figure it out without somebody telling you, here's the 5 steps to get there. Yep. So that's incredible. Yep. What are some other, key things that people transitioning can take away? Obviously the job market is up and down. There's changes going on, digital revolution, digital transformation companies are going through. AI is in the picture, where some of these roles are being phased out. And I'm sure you guys are tracking all that and kind of helping people navigate it. Obviously tech sales and things aren't going anywhere. Pharmaceutical, staffing and recruiting, definitely not going anywhere. But what would you say to people who are in those roles that may be taken over by these advanced technologies, and what they should do to package up themselves to better tell that story?
Yeah, I mean, listen, AI is definitely, I don't consider it a threat. It's like I think like any new technology, it's like armor that you're adding to the human element, right? Mm-hmm. So I not to use another hockey analogy, but when I was like 16, these sticks came out called Synergies. They're unbelievable, so much lighter. Your shot was harder, but it was like you still needed the fundamentals to take advantage of it, right? So I think at the core of the technology revolution that we're going through and going to continue to go through forever is that you've got to go back to the core human elements. And my joke is like, the only AI that really matters is attitude and initiative. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have those two things, none of this other stuff really matters, yep. Right? At the end of the day. So, and listen, there are certain things that are gonna go away because of AI. You've got to try to go and unlock the part of those processes where the human element is critical. And I think, like, to your point about the ups and downs of the job market, I was born in 1984. I remember 2001. I remember 2008 because that's when I entered the job market. My parents, your parents, they went through a recession every single 8 years, their entire life. Like this is life, yeah. Right? Like it's gonna, like shit gets hard, right? We have a t-shirt that we sell in our store. It says, "Nobody cares, work harder." And that's like the best advice that I think anybody can get is nobody cares, work harder. Like it is what it is. Nobody owes you anything. So you just got to put in the work, the research, the preparation, and nobody's coming to save you. So it's you versus you, 100%.
Yeah. I love that. That's something everybody needs to hear a little bit more often, whether it's on a shirt or on their mirror somewhere. It's, we start to get into our own heads, and we want somebody to come pat us on the back and say it's going to be all right, and I'm here to save you. And they're not coming. I promise you that. So, and if they do, you're in a good situation, and probably going to set you up for failure if they do come. But JR, it's been an absolute pleasure. A lot of benefit and value in this conversation. Before we get to the final question, where can folks find you? I have your website here. How can folks connect with you, whether they're a candidate wanting to pivot into a new role or a company that is looking for folks in this arena?
Yeah, they get right on our website. There's a tab for athletes and vets and a tab for companies. People can reach out directly to me. My email is just jr@shiftgroup.io. I'm also, I would recommend, I'm a good follow on LinkedIn. I'm me on LinkedIn, which is it's good and it's pros and it's cons, but I'm always a good follow because I'm not afraid to tell people when they're wrong or when I think they're wrong. I have strong opinions, loosely held, I think is the way I would describe me as a LinkedIn follow.
Love it. Love the rawness. That's what the world needs more of, because if you're not living that way, you're probably wasting your time, wasting your energy. So I love the energy you're bringing. Definitely check out JR and the team. I see Dylan joined us. Have chatted with Dylan a few times. So great folks over there, and looking forward to winning together going forward. JR, one of the questions we like to ask, this show is all about connection and mindset, and everybody's definition of being connected is a little bit different. This episode we called "Connecting to Grow, Learn, and Earn." Obviously, that's relevant to what you're bringing to the world. But what does connection, as a term, as a mantra, mean to you in your life currently?
Be where your feet are. The past is nothing but a memory. The future is nothing but like an idea. The only thing that matters is today. That it's a gift. That's why they call it the present, right? So to me, connection is being where you are and being in that moment, even when it's hard. Just like take it in, get through it. Right? If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. I'm saying a lot of cliches, but you get the idea, man. Like don't worry too much about the past. Don't think about too much about the future, and do whatever you can in every moment to get you where you want to go. That's what connection means to me, is connection to the present, and being where your feet are.
I love it. That's where we all need to live. JR, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us, and looking forward to continuing the conversation.